Hey, this is Tim, and I'm just going to give you a little demo on some layering in Photoshop. This is my finished photo. I'll show you first that I took down at Harvest Home Farms with Mike and Becky, and it was very difficult shooting conditions because these two lambs were laying in the dark shade, and of course one is black and one is white, and difficult shooting conditions to be sure. In order to get the depth of field, you would have to be having a narrow, smaller aperture down into the f8s and 9s in order to get them both, because one is behind the other one, to get them both in focus. And that just wasn't possible without a tripod, and they're moving animals and the whole thing. So I had to shoot as best I could, and what I ended up doing is and I'll zoom in on this, I ended up focusing on the white one, and I got what I think is a fairly decent shot of the white one. The face is what's in focus, and that's important. Of course, the black one was doing goofy things. And another shot that I have is the black one in focus, looking off, and the white one is out of focus. Well, I wanted to combine these two to see what I could do. So I did some light editing in Photoshop to begin with, or in Lightroom to begin with, but primarily I wanted to take them over into Photoshop. So I'm going to take this one that I marked in yellow and this one that I marked in yellow. I'm going to edit them both in Photoshop. And I indeed have two files, one with the white one in focus and one with the black one in focus. So I'm going to do control, let's see once, the black one changing its head, whereas the white one pretty much has the same look, it's just a little different. So I'm going to use the black one as my base photo because it's going to be a whole lot easier to sneak the white one in on it. So I'm going to come over here to the white one. I'm going to do Control A, selecting everything. You see the marching ants. Then Control C, which is going to copy it. Then I'm going to come back over to this photo and do Control V to paste it. Now you can see that I have two layers here, one and one. Now they're not lined up because I was hand holding and they were moving, or I was moving. So I'm going to lower the opacity of the top one so I can kind of see where it is. Then I'm going to go up here and take my move tool, and I'm only working on this top layer, and I'm going to slide this around so I get that white close to where raise the opacity again. So now I'm looking at the top layer, which is visible. Of course, that's the layer with the black lamb. So I'm going to take this top layer and I'm going to make it invisible. I'm going to make it completely invisible by holding down my Alt, clicking on the mask, and that's putting a black mask. Black conceals, white reveals. So right now I've taken this mask, or I've taken this layer, and I've completely hidden it with this black thing. If I take a white brush and I paint back and forth, look over here, you see this little white part. I'm revealing what's underneath that mask, and that's essentially exactly what I'm going to do. But for right now, I'll go back to make a big brush, and I'll back to making that thing completely black over there. None of the top layer is showing. So I'm going to take my brush, make it a white brush because it's a black mask, and I've got it highlighted here. If I click over here, that's not going to do it. I've got to tell the computer that I'm going to mess with that mask. So now I'm taking my brush, it relatively soft. This would give a real hard edge. This gives a fatter, blurry edge to it. I'm going to brush about here, and I'm now going to paint on this black mask with this white brush just on this guy. I want this black one back here blurred. He was actually blurred in both photos, so this is going to work out great. I'm just going to sneak along the edge of this. Go too high. There I went too high, and I can go to black. So you can always recover it by painting black back onto it. So So if you make a mistake like I did up here, oops. So I'm coming back here and I'm painting with my white brush. Hairs up in the ears here. Worried this works out perfectly because the background is so blurred. Even if I sharpen the blurry background, it's not doing too much. Stop right here because this is where black one, we don't want to mess with him, so I can come down here and still, I didn't have them lined up perfectly, the black is coming through. I'm going to put, but that part of the lamb is blurry back there anyway, so again, not too much to worry about. Sure, where the grass is perfectly focused or not, so well, how do you know that you got all of it? And I'll show you that in a second here. I'm just going to find the outer edges of this lamp. Oh, out there. Now I can always click or hold down the back shift button to see a mask where I am. But what I'm going to do is turn off this front layer. There's my lamp. So now I can kind of go a little bit faster and fill in wherever the checkerboard pattern is. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I want all of this lamb, but only from the other layer that I'm doing. See that even if I want to come back here and fix stuff, but I really don't want to lose the detail in these hairs. So, well, one thing I can do is make my brush a little bit harder, so it's a bit more defined edge to it. Now I can, you go back and forth between black and white quite a bit. Remember, I'm working on this mask, which is black, because black was hiding this layer, and I'm just slowly revealing parts of this layer here on top of the other layer. I'm using my bracket keys left and right to make the brush a little bit smaller. Pretty good, because when I turn on the other layer, all of a sudden I have my original focused black sheep lamb and my original blurry one. But the second shot that I took that I knew I would need, because I could only focus on one or the other, and because his ears against that black one back there, it worked out really well. I can see some marks here, so let me clean those up. Hard edge because it. Hairs on the white ear sticking anyway, and that's not the eyes, so it's not all that important. So I can just kind of look around him and see he's fine. It is a little blurry in here, and I know that there's a black. I can always move him, I guess. Then I got to clean up some stuff over here, so I'm not going to do that. But I could. So he is right there, and I think I can maybe just sneak a little. Oops, see, I didn't, I'm on the wrong place. I have to undo on the mask. Get a little of the black that was on the other layer, but here's how I'm going to flatten my layer. Now I've only got one photo, and now I can take my clone stamp and say I'm going to take some of some of part of the lamb. I'm going to get rid of some of these things, even though it was natural and even though it was there. I think they distract. Part of the lamb. I'm going to take stick. Tricky. Clone brush again, so I know that this is a good area, so I'm going to clone right there, and then I'm going to start painting. Eventually, kind of just goes away. A lot better than what it was. So as I zoom out, I'm here. Now, I'm in Photoshop. I'm gonna quit here in Photoshop. I'm gonna close this, save it, send it back to Lightroom. Close that one. My one that just popped in. Last step to this then is I'm going to take a brush in Lightroom, a shadows brush. I'm going to make shadows a little bit brighter. I'm going to make my contrast a little bit less. I'm going to make my clarity a little bit higher. And let's just see. Now too white. Painting, and again we can use our O key to see mask, or at least an outline of what we're doing. Now I know that I've got him selected. I'm going to turn the O key, press it again, and get rid of it. And I'm going to zoom in on this little guy. And because that mask that I just painted is still there, and it was set up with this stuff, I don't have to have these things. I can now change them. Moving the sliders hard, you can always put your mouse over the numbers and do much. Now the last thing I want to do is darken, or this next to the last thing is I want to darken him down a little bit. So I'm going to take another brush. This time I'm going to choose highlights. I'm going to lower my highlights. Slide my slider around to see what happens. It didn't do too much. New one. Exposure. 0. Bothering me is this highlight. So now we're going to take a graduated filter, look at exposure, that's fine, and highlights together. Down, you can see what happens to the top there. The more you do this, the more gradual it is, but now it's bleeding into my picture. So and just move this thing down a little. Draw the eye away from it. So here's my before, after I brought it back from Photoshop, and here's after. So that just softens that whole top. I think I can bring it down a little. And I'm happy with that. I now have 2 lambs in focus. I have 2 lambs that are vastly different in color, balanced, and I did it in a shady spot, and I did it with 2 photos that I took very quickly. A little bit of work behind the scenes, but that's how